The Hausladen Company thanks all the hard-working drivers who are moving goods across the country. We can't do it without you.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
As trucking companies and policymakers rush to get electric trucks on the road, John Hausladen of the Minnesota Trucking Association has a request. Take a breath. We'll hear about their new comprehensive report on electrification. After a 30-year career behind the wheel, David Proctor has taken his show called Grabbing the Hammer Lane on the road. We'll speak with him about his endeavor and his play of a trucker's narrative. And finally, for the second week in a row, DAT has seen the lowest load volume in the last 8 years. Coming up, we'll speak with DAT about what they'll be watching as we get closer to spring. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Mark. All Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association members are encouraged to support the DRIVE Act. A call to action went out this week to all OOIDA members nationwide. The CTA supplements the letter OOIDA sent to House leadership earlier this week, urging action on the legislation. The DRIVE Act would prevent FMCSA from advancing any potential speed limiter mandate. You're encouraged to contact your lawmaker, and you can do this easily by visiting fightingfortruckers.com. The price of diesel went unchanged, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. EIA has the average price of a gallon of diesel remaining at $4.10, like it was the week before. 5 areas EIA tracks saw increases at the pumps. The most was in the Rocky Mountain region, which went up 15 cents a gallon. 5 regions saw decreases. Central Atlantic and the Midwest saw diesel go down 3 cents per gallon. An over-the-road truck driver has finally been arrested after 649 warrants for her arrest. Columbus Division of Police posted that on February 9th, they received a request for assistance from the Spring Township Police Department in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, regarding a warrant for Ayuka Keith, also known as Carol Ann Sumner. The post stated that Keith had a staggering 649 warrants for her arrest, including 322 felonies and 327 misdemeanors related to theft. As an over-the-road truck driver, she was believed to be in the Columbus area. She was apprehended without incident on February 16th. A human trafficking awareness initiative is taking place in Canada this week. This annual awareness and outreach effort by the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance aims to educate commercial motor vehicle drivers, motor carriers, law enforcement officers, and the general public about the crime of human trafficking, what signs to look for, and what to do if you suspect someone is being trafficked. Dylan Wecht is the public sector engagement specialist at Truckers Against Trafficking. He says truck drivers play a vital role in stopping trafficking.
As our name suggests, and one of the main industries we work with is the trucking industry. And just to go back to when we started our organization, we were thinking, how can we combat such a large crime, something that is both domestic and international, labor and sex trafficking? What population of people could we train would really make a difference if they had these tools? And we thought truckers. They're the eyes and ears of our nation's highways. They're trained to be vigilant. They see things that other people do not see. And they're oftentimes in areas where traffickers will bring their victims. So rest stops, truck stops, gas stations, hotels and motels. So by equipping truck drivers with these tools, they could notice activity that seems suspicious or criminal activity and then report it. So it's just giving them a different set of eyes to view the world and just look out for these possible indicators of human trafficking. They are an ideal population, both because, like I said, they're vigilant and they are great in numbers. So they're obviously in more places than law enforcement or any other individual when it comes to being on the road.
Canada's National Human Trafficking Awareness Day is February 22nd. The province of Alberta announced $2.8 million this week to Women Building Futures, a program to help more women train for jobs as professional drivers in commercial trucking. Carol Moen is the president and CEO of Women Building Futures, an organization that supports women in industries where they are traditionally underrepresented.
At WBF, our mission is economic security for women. Careers in commercial transportation provide exceptional opportunities for women to reach financial independence. We recognize the need to continue to eliminate barriers for women in all underrepresented groups, enabling them to safely access effective pathways to truly life-changing careers as professional drivers. This grant plays a pivotal role in helping WBF break down those barriers and encourage more women to explore career opportunities in transportation. It supports awareness campaigns to open the minds of more women thinking about the career, training to build the skills and confidence needed for them. And ultimately, it also allows us to engage in a significant way with partners who are truly committed to safe and inclusive work environments, that not only support our grads, but all diverse people in that industry.
Alberta's Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors says fewer than 3% of Class 1 drivers in Alberta are women. In an effort to reduce vehicular traffic in the most congested metropolitan areas of the U.S., $250 million is now available in grants. The Biden-Harris administration announced today that this funding will be made available over 5 years in competitive grants to advance innovation and multimodal solutions for congestion issues. The Congestion Relief Program will provide funding to reduce highway congestion and the economic and environmental costs associated with congestion. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is in Hawaii this week to discuss infrastructure with transportation officials. KHON reports that his first stop will be Maui, where he will look at ways to help with recovery efforts from the August wildfires. State transportation officials say they are getting federal money for improvement projects. Those include improving airport runways and fixing up freeways and bridges. Colorado DOT has new ads to educate people about the dangers of driving high. In a video clip called "Don't Get Caught in La La Land," a bean is slow to go when the light turns green. Colorado DOT says consuming THC is proven to slow your reaction time, reduce focus, and temporarily weaken problem-solving skills, which can leave you in La La Land. The new ad reminds people that a DUI can cost upwards of $13,500. The department says the same DUI laws apply to marijuana as to alcohol or any combination of impairing substances. It also says that in 2023, there were 218 impaired-related crash fatalities on Colorado roads. And finally, if your name is Ryan and you want to be part of a record-breaking event, you'll want to visit Buck Wild in Austin, Texas this weekend. UPI reports that a Ryan Rodeo is happening in an effort to break the Guinness World Record for the largest same-name gathering in Texas. Ryan Meetup, which is based in New York, announced it's holding its first rodeo in Texas with an aim toward breaking the world record that was set in 2017 when 2,325 people named Ivan came together in Bosnia. The event is scheduled for Saturday at 5 p.m. Central. Participants will be required to show official identification to prove their name really is Ryan. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. Next, Scott Thompson talks electric trucks with John Hausladen of the Minnesota Trucking Association, and Ashley Blackford talks with trucker David Proctor about his play. We'll be back in just a moment with more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Stock up on How's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have How's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, How's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit howsproducts.com.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now. 855-976-4291.
Buckling up keeps everyone safe on the roads. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by FMCSA.
Welcome back to Landline Now. You know, there's been a lot of talk and action in recent years to electrify commercial trucks, but the Minnesota Trucking Association is urging everyone to take a breath after finding in a new report that the rush to make the change could lead to a whole host of problems. Joining us to break down what they found is the association's president, John Hausladen. John, thanks for joining us. Let's get right into it with what you view as maybe the biggest takeaway from this comprehensive study your association conducted.
Well, what we tell our members is the biggest takeaway from the study is take a breath. Take a breath. Internal combustion engines are going to be the dominant source of energy to propel trucks for decades to come. And so business decisions need to take that into mind. And I think that's the biggest thing we tell our members, but outward facing, we really have to tell the government that too, that the potential of electrification for vehicles is real. It's being done with cars, and there then is sort of the myth. You take what you can do with a car, you apply it to a truck, and here we go, and we're just a few years down the road. Well, no, the ecosystem, the changes, the demand for heavy truck electrification are so vastly different that government really needs also to take a breath and say, whatever we're doing, let's not live in this fantasy that we're going to just leapfrog technology that's here and go to an end solution. It's just not going to happen. So that's the first point.
Is that a message that policymakers, politicians, whoever it may be, are they understanding that message? Is that a message that you are conveying to them? Because again, I think there is a real appetite for making something like this happen, and it makes sense on paper. But as we know, there are a lot of things that make sense on paper that just don't apply to the trucking industry as a whole. You talk about the challenges there. Is that something that is being received by the people that really need to hear that right now?
I'll tell you, it's a matter of where you tell the story. One of the things we've done in parallel is to engage in truck ride-alongs. And, we do these all the time. And we've done terminal visits, and we bring legislators. And, okay, those are good. They serve a purpose. But one of the things we learned, particularly in Minnesota, we have one party, the Democrats, controlling the governor's house and then the House of Representatives and the Senate. That one-party control, they're not particularly interested in our message, so how do we break through? So we've reached out to urban Democrats, and we've invited them for an hour-long truck ride in their district. And I got to tell you, we've gotten a lot of yeses, some no's, but we've gotten a lot of yeses. And what we do is we set up this hour experience, and we have employee drivers and independent contractors. And I tell you, the independent contractor story is fascinating because you see the pride, see the ownership. And so we get to talk not only about electrification, but we talk about business models, reality. But so we do a walk around the truck, we hop inside, we talk about the e-logs, we talk about what that means for driver hours and productivity. And this is all just neutral. This is just learning what it means to be a truck driver. And then we talk about what's the technology on the truck and if it has advanced technology and camera recorders and all of that. And then we start driving. And halfway through the drive, we pull up to a fueling station. And I tell you, this is the best part of it. We stop, and I'll turn to the driver, because here's what it is. It's the driver, it's the legislator, and me. I'm sitting in the sleeper bunk, just the three of us on a little field trip. And I'll stop when we've parked. We don't fuel, but we're like ready to fuel. And I ask the driver, hey, Joe, how many gallons do you take on at a time? How long does it take to fill? How far can you go on that fill? How many days would it last you? So we sort of get a baseline. And then I say, Joe, let's pretend this was an electric truck. How long would it take to charge? Well, hours, not minutes. How far could you go? 300 miles versus 1,200 miles. Well, how many times would you have to fuel in a day? Multiple times. oh, and by the way, what would this do to your productivity and available on-duty and driving hours? It would kill it. So the legislators, to a person, male and female, will drive away from those little visits and they go, oh my, boy, we are a long way from heavy truck electrification. Ding, ding, ding. Light bulb goes on. It is the most impactful thing we do.
Yeah, and that is something that I wish happened more often across the country, because I think once you do understand, you know, what the everyday life of a truck driver is, you understand that a lot of these things that you know people want to accomplish are not going to be accomplished in the timeline that they're looking at, and you kind of hit on the points there as the reason why. And you talk about in this report here specifically, and you mentioned in there as well, the challenges of electrifying a fleet. I mean, you're talking refueling time, which you mentioned there. There's also other challenges, right? The infrastructure just isn't there right now to meet the demand that they're hoping is going to be there. There's also a cost problem as well. Can you talk a little bit about what your report found on those two topics in particular?
Well, let's just start with the base unit. You know, a brand new over-the-road truck, you know, I don't know if it's overly chromed out, but, you know, you're $180,000 to $200,000. I mean, who can imagine we're talking those numbers today, but we are. The comparable battery electric truck for that sort of heavy long-haul application, $480,000. $480,000, one truck. And we don't know what the used market is. You know, so we start with that reality that how does that pencil out, and will customers pay more just because of the type of truck and power you're using? But then, you know, there are these functional realities that, well, the truck's heavier, so now you've displaced load. It can't travel as far, so you have range issues. And then the infrastructure, and I think when we talk infrastructure, we have to be really clear that, yes, it's roads, yes, it's charging stations, but it's also parking when these trucks are being charged. It's repair facilities. And we did a survey as part of the study, and what's fascinating, when we asked our members, you know, how concerned are you about the availability of, well, you know, the facilities, great concern. The technicians, very significant concern. Well, their infrastructure, that's the human infrastructure to make it go, because we understand that, you know, uptime is key, being able to get timely repairs on the road. And so when we talk to policymakers, and back to your other question, when you're talking about this in a meeting room or a conference room or a legislator's office, it's very theoretical. But going back to that little visit, if you just have them in a truck and you stop, and all of a sudden I asked them, I said, like, where are all these trucks going to stage? We'll look at a fueling depot and go, well, let's say this fueling depot, a small one, has 4 fueling lanes. Well, at 15 minutes charge, you know, you can get 4 lanes times 4 per hour. I mean, that's your max. But if now you've got 4 trucks and they're each taking 3 to 5 hours to charge, where are all the trucks going to park waiting to be charged? So it really hits them fast. But I will tell you, you know, getting the fleets, the drivers, the scheduling, it's a very strategic, intentional process. And hats off to the drivers and the fleets that commit to do it. But I can tell you it's not a bigger payoff. We link back to our report. You got to tell the story in a real way.
Yeah, and the one thing I didn't ask you about and you didn't mention there is you're in Minnesota. It tends to get cold there, as we all know. And we've seen just recently, I know in Chicago and elsewhere, you know, these Tesla vehicles that just have basically turned into, you know, a lump of coal, essentially. They're not moving because it's too cold. That's an issue there in Minnesota as well, right?
Well, yes, we see that in cold weather climates like Minnesota, these big, heavier lithium-ion, you know, heavy-duty batteries, they can lose 40% of their power. Well, you know, uptime is everything. And, you know, and I think we have to be honest brokers. I mean, can you power a truck with electricity? Well, yes. I mean, you know, there are prototypes, but prototypes don't just translate into reality. And so it's back to that. I think one of the biggest challenges is, you know, you watch television today and you will see ads by car manufacturers that will show the next generation vehicle is electric. You can charge it in your garage. Well, they never talk about any of the problem. It's all the beauty. And that's this perception. And again, if you're a policymaker, you're elected, or you're a staffer, you think, well, we can just do this. So So again, our report was not meant to just, hey, we're just going to say no, we're going to drag our feet. But the point is, we feel like there's this narrative that what can be done with automotive can be done with trucks. It's just going to take a little longer. And we want to be very clear and say, no, this is a huge lift. So why don't we spend energy now maximizing the internal combustion engines we have, using the cleanest burning fuels, maximize things like renewable diesel and biofuels. Is there a bigger role for natural gas? Yes. And so let's just be honest and figure out how to maximize those and not have government mandates like we see in California that are mandating certain types of vehicle sales, certain types of vehicle usage. Now, California is a different world. I mean, you have ports, you have the sea, you have mountains, you have lots of people. They have huge problems. So, they need to manage their environment, but Minnesota is not California.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, take a breath, I think was what you said at the top of this. I'm curious, you mentioned, obviously, you talked to your members about this issue in particular. Is this pretty much a consensus? It sounds like most of the people are on the same page here, and it sounds like this is something that maybe, as you're kind of alluding to here, this is something that maybe the free market is going to it's going to have to play out in the free market, it sounds like, if we are going to get to this point where a lot of people think we're headed. But again, take a breath. It's going to take some time, right?
Well, it's going to take time. And frankly, I think most truckers want the free market to operate, but you want new technology to be demonstrated. Well, a demonstration and a mandate are two different things. Mm-hmm. But we know it's going to take massive government subsidies or rebates, incentives, call them what you want, but the public is going to have to pay for the technology capital investment to transition to this widely different infrastructure. And when we look at our members, I have some members right now that are using electric spotter trucks, and they've gotten some grants. So, that's kind of how they got introduced. But, when we have those honest conversations about, well, could an electric spotter truck really work? And really pay itself out with a subsidy? And the answer is, well, maybe it could, because it's a very different application and it's a place to start. And so, we can do those things. But the report also says, hey, let's not game the system to electricity. Hydrogen has a lot of promise for the long-haul sector. Now, it has a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Making hydrogen and having technology to essentially create these electrical producing factories on wheels with hydrogen and all that. It's doable, but let's not game it to electricity. Let's look at all of these other options. So I'm really proud of our team. We had a task force that had a really nice cross-section. We had fleets, we had dealers, we had repair facilities, we had energy providers, we actually had one of our major electrical utilities, and then we brought in legislators, heads of state agencies, representatives of national organizations. We brought in, again, the electrical utility. We really tried to have a very honest conversation, and we had some very great conversations as a team about what should our report say. We wanted to make sure that we were fair. We weren't using opinion. And so if you go to the full report, which can be found at mntruck.org, look under resources, mntruck.org/resources, you can find both an infographic that has the 12 key takeaways, nice, easy to read form, but there's the full 15-page report that is cited and cross-referenced. And, you mentioned ATRI earlier. We use a lot of ATRI data in ours to confirm it. We added data to it that we were able to capture and use, and we think it'll stand up, to great scrutiny. And again, the goal in the end is to say, so let's have the right public debate. Let's have the right policies being put in place. Let's have the right funding for research and incentives, and let's not game it to a solution that we're trying to leapfrog to. And again, come back to this reality that internal combustion engines are going to be the workhorse for trucking for decades to come. So let's make it the best and cleanest it can be.
Our thanks to John Hausladen of the Minnesota Trucking Association. We're headed for a break here on Landline Now, but don't go anywhere. There's much more show to come.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now, welcome back. A retired truck driver has fully immersed himself in the world of theater. David Proctor spent 30 years in the commercial trucking industry. He's now written and stars in a one-act play called Grabbing the Hammer Lane. He joins me now. David, can you tell me more about what this play is about?
Grabbing the Hammer Lane is actually a story about two men, prodigal son and his adopted father. And they have a falling out, and it has catastrophic consequences. And the play takes off with the son seeking help from a therapist to try to understand some of the decisions he's made that had an effect on the direction of his life and the contentious relationship he had with his father. And there are two men both looking for redemption, reconciliation, and healing.
Where did the idea of the play come from?
The idea came from my many, many years on the road and the time spent away from family. And I unfortunately lost both of my parents during COVID, 2 months apart. And it forced me to step back and take a hard look at what I was doing and the time I lost being on the road for so long. And my wife, she asked me a poignant question. And she asked me, did I want trucking to be my only legacy, or was there something else that I wanted to leave behind? And of course, I had a background in acting. I was trained classically at the American Conservatory Theater. And even though I left the theater for a steady paycheck, the theater never left me.
Who do you play in this play?
I play two roles. I play the role of the main character, Matt, middle-aged trucker, and his aging father, who's at home, languishing, getting old, getting up in age. And I play both roles between scenes.
And can you kind of walk me through your experience in trucking when you got started?
I got started in trucking back in the early 90s. And from there, I fell in love with the adventure, going coast to coast, all through Canada, through all types of weather. And it got to the point where, when you no longer needed a GPS to get from Sacramento to Tampa, it was no longer adventure. It was just a job. So I spent close to 30 years over the road, coast to coast, Mexico to Canada, all 48 contiguous states in the United States. And for a long time, I loved every minute of it. And it got to the point where it had a negative effect on my personal relationships.
What did you typically haul?
At first, it was a general commodity. And through the latter years of my career, I focused on chemical transportation, chemicals. And then my last job, I was pretty much hauling tankers for food products.
Now, I know we discussed this a few days ago when we chatted, but you don't often see the world of trucking collide with the world of theater. I want to get your perspective on that, and I know that's something you'd like to see change. Is that right?
Yeah. I feel, I'm a theater nerd, and I've gone to many plays, Broadway, regional theater, improvisation theater, and what I noticed is that theater very rarely represented or reflected the stories and the lives of this nomadic subculture that we call trucking. And over the years, I came across so many, interesting stories and conversations, and I kept a journal, and I realized I had like a wealth of information that I could curate into a play. And so this is my way of finding a niche in the theater world where, trucking and theater collide.
How do you think truck drivers would relate to this play?
Well, the play touches upon some issues of mental health, depression, addiction. And in between the plays, we have some segues in between scenes where it's CB chatter. And so we did some CB chatter voiceovers while I'm doing costume changes for the next scene. And if, for those truckers that come to see the play, they'll be able to identify with some of the segues and also some of the mentions within the script of the main character being on the road for so long.
And since you did have a background in trucking, did you use some real life experiences in the playwriting process?
Partly. The play is semi-autobiographical in that it does reflect some of my own personal experiences, but the play overall is written in a fictitious way.
Where has the play been shown?
We first put it up at the Orlando International Film Festival, Fringe Festival. I said film festival, the Fringe Festival in Orlando, and we landed very well. We were well received by the local newspapers. We got good reviews, and we actually we were awarded the best solo drama for the festival. We also performed at the Fringe Festival in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and the Orlando Festival invited us back this past January to perform an encore, 2 more performances. And after that, we performed in Roswell, Georgia for their Roots Cultural Festival. And now we're getting ready to perform in the largest solo festival in the world, United Solo Theater Festival in New York City on Theater Row, right there on Broadway.
What does that mean for those who aren't familiar with the theater world and Broadway to make it to New York? That's a pretty big deal.
It is a big deal. And, well, I think it's important that we see ourselves reflected on stage, our stories, those compelling stories. And theater itself is supposed to grab you by the soul. And the way we've written this play, the way I've written this play, it does that. It hits those notes in terms of life experiences that people, no matter whether they're in the trucking industry or not, that they can relate to, because it's about relationships with family.
How have you seen audience react to this play?
Oh, the reaction has been incredible. In fact, we had one patron wait for us after the show, and she said, "Well, I thought it was going to be, all about trucking stuff." I was so surprised. It was so compelling. And another gentleman reached out to us, and he pretty much had a similar contentious relationship with his father. And while he was telling me his story, he was kind of welling up, trying to fight back some tears. And that let me know that the play, really hit home, with audience members.
That's got to be a good feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the last show we did in Roswell, I could actually hear the audience at different points in the play, shifting, emotionally. They were really leaned in.
So you wouldn't say, this play is just for people who have experienced truck driving. It's really for everyone.
It's really for everyone. But those in the trucking industry who see the play, they'll be able to recognize some of the elements in the play.
What would you say to a truck driver who's listening and thinking, ooh, theater, like Broadway, that's not really for me? What would you say to them?
I would say, as a former trucker myself, I took time to, when I had downtime, I'd find a play, I'd read up on what was going on. And there's just something about going into the theater, just like when you go into a movie theater, you don't get the immediate response like you do with theater when you're on stage and you're right there in front of the audience. And so you can feel that energy. It's a positive energy. And it's one of those, I guess the word I'm looking for is it has a cohesive element that binds all of us together in terms of the human experience.
Did you expect this play to get the attention that it's gotten?
Actually, honestly, no, because we didn't really know how it was going to land when we first performed it. But since it got such a great response, and even to the point where we got invited back to perform it. And now it's a platform, right? Because the trucker narrative is pretty much the brand. Grabbing the Hammer Lane is the title of the first narrative. And the second narrative is already done, and it's ready for workshop. And hopefully down the road, we're thinking of expanding it into a larger feature off-Broadway and hopefully a short film.
That kind of leads into my next question. What does the future look like for you when it comes to playwriting?
Good question. In terms of playwriting, now that I've returned back to my first passion, which is theater and writing, I'm hoping that through these narratives that we can carve out a lane, particularly for the trucking industry, that everyone can enjoy, but it also, introduces the world to the lives that we pass on the road every day, not even thinking about it. But there's a story behind that steering wheel going down the road. Mm. And I believe that what we're creating today down the road will have an impact on lots of people.
How many people are involved in this production?
First and foremost, my partner, my wife, Karen, and our daughter, who lives out in L.A. She handles most of the social media. My sister-in-law does the press, reaches out to press organizations, newspapers. And we have my director who helped put this play up, and through directing us through Zoom calls, because he lives in Georgia, and we would rehearse here in Jersey, and in preparation to get the show off, on the road. So yeah, there's my wife, my daughter, my sister-in-law, our director, and that's pretty much it. That's the whole crew.
If anyone listening wants more information on the play or upcoming shows, where can they go for that?
They can find us on grabbingthehammerlane.com, and we're also present on Instagram and Facebook. Grabbing the Hammer Lane Instagram, Grabbing the Hammer Lane Facebook, and grabbingthehammerlane.com.
Any final thoughts?
I'm very excited about the direction that we're going in, and I'm hoping that maybe I could leave something long after I'm gone that'll stay forever. And the show that we're doing in New York is on April 11th for anyone listening who might be in the area, on 42nd Street, April 11th at 7 p.m. You can find our show on the United Solo website if you're interested in buying tickets.
That was David Proctor talking about his play called Grabbing the Hammer Lane, a one-act play about prodigal rebellion and fleeting moments for redemption. For more information, you can visit grabbingthehammerlane.com. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford.
A few notices we wanted to remind you about. Iowa has extended its Harvest Proclamation through February 23rd. Vehicles transporting ag products can be overweight without a permit. That applies to loads transported on all highways in Iowa except the interstate system. Loads cannot exceed 90,000 pounds of gross weight. Organizers of the Mid-America Trucking Show have moved the truck parking community site to a grass lot across from Gate 1 at the Kentucky Expo Center. Parking there is free, and there's a shuttle service for trips to and from the show, courtesy of TA Petro. The penalty phase of speed limiter enforcement in British Columbia begins April 5th. Drivers of heavy commercial vehicles will face fines of up to $368 Canadian if they get caught without a speed limiter. And Navistar has recalled close to 900 trucks. The steering gear may have been assembled incorrectly in some 2024 International HX, LT, RH trucks and some 2024 and 25 International HV and MV trucks. The problem could lead to a loss of steering control. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the program. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a cat scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're trucking on a cat scale.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be, and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello once again to Robert Rouse with DAT. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Ashley. Thanks for asking.
Let's start off by taking a look at last week. How did the spot market perform?
Yeah, overall, it has been a brutal start to the year for the spot market. Nationally, we saw the number of loads decrease by 17.6%, down to around 647,000 loads on the DAT load board. And that's for the second week in a row we have seen the lowest load volume for that week in the last 8 years. As we get a little closer to spring, we're going to be watching this year's produce production, which is typically a catalyst, a small catalyst for the year. So far, produce volumes have started 2024 at pretty low levels. January truckload volume is the lowest in the last 10 years, although late reporting in the California citrus may improve the numbers slightly. When we look at the number of trucks on the DAT load board, they also decreased last week down to 318,000 trucks. That's kind of abnormal from what we would see with a lower load volume, but that could be some of the attrition starting to really hit the market for trucks leaving, potentially having a little bit of an impact there. When we look at the overall strength of the spot market last week, we saw load-to-truck ratios decrease for all three equipment types. Similar to the overall load volume, we're seeing the lowest load-to-truck ratios in the last 8 years. If we just look at one dry van freight, national spot load post volumes dropped for the fourth consecutive week, and following last week's 21% week-over-week decline just in dry vans. Load post volumes have remained at their lowest in the last 8 years and about 61% lower than this time last year. Carrier equipment posts also decreased by about 6%, which is a lot lower than that 21, but that still resulted in the dry van loaded truck ratio dropping by about 16%, down to 1.21. And that's actually the lowest since 2017. So definitely something that we're monitoring there. Lastly, talking about spot rates. Spot rates have dropped across all three equipment types for the third straight week, now below 2019 levels. Following the mid-January national freeze, the average dry van line haul rate dropped by about 12 cents per mile, and that's following last week's 4 cent per mile decrease. At about $2.11 per mile, line haul rates are about 13 cents per mile lower than this time last year, and about 1 penny per mile lower than even 2019. At $2.46 per mile, reefer line haul rates dropped by about below $2 per mile for the first time, if you minus out fuel, since mid-December, decreasing by about 20 cents per mile in the last month. And compared to last year, they're about 10 cents per mile lower. Lastly, we've seen flatbeds drop the least. They're kind of holding everything up a little bit. They only dropped by about 2 cents per mile from last week, down to $2.54 a mile. The big piece of all of the spot rates that we're seeing right now is fuel continues to rise, which is becoming just a larger percent of those overall rates.
What markets should owner-operators know more about this week?
Yeah, one of the markets is actually my hometown, or actually where I was born, is down in LA. According to the DAT data, the Los Angeles freight market was the number one biggest dry van market, number 4 biggest for the reefers, and the 10th largest flatbed market in the country in all of 2023. There's various reasons why LA is such a big freight market and why it's just a large part of our supply chain. First, we have port connectivity. The truck freight market in Los Angeles is closely tied to the ports, particularly the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. Trucks play a pretty crucial role in transporting goods to and from these major ports, connecting the maritime shipping industry to distribution centers and markets. So if you're going to be in that area, make sure you have your TWIC card because that's going to help you with those loads a whole bunch. According to ISH Market and Peers data, volumes through the Port of Los Angeles, which is the largest port in the U.S. now, actually grew by 23% month over month in January, compared to the number 2 port, which is out in New York, where volumes were up by about 2.1% month over month. A lot of that is because redistribution of freight volumes from the East Coast due to what's happening in the Red Sea. Next is going to be highway infrastructure. Los Angeles has an extensive highway infrastructure, including major interstates and highways. This network facilitates the movement of trucks carrying freight throughout the city and beyond. However, congestion on the Los Angeles highways is known to be a challenge that can impact efficiencies of truck freight operations. To kind of get around that, you just got to really watch what time of day you're moving through those really high traffic areas. And other than that, that kind of helps with some of that traffic issues. Next, we have a lot of distribution centers actually in the LA region. The region hosts numerous distribution centers and warehouses serving as hubs for storage and distribution of goods. Trucking companies play a vital role in transporting products between these facilities and connecting them to the broader supply chain. And last, it's the population size. The large population of Los Angeles contributes significantly to the demand for goods and services, making it a substantial freight market. With more people, there's an increased consumption, leading to higher volumes of goods being transported via trucks to meet their needs of the residents and even the businesses. But so where's all this freight going coming out of California or the Los Angeles market? When you look across all 3 equipment types, you'll see that there's a lot that's going to other California markets, and that's where the freight goes to. LA to Stockton is one of the highest volumes of outbound freight coming out of LA. According to DAT's market condition forecast, we are seeing the LA market should be moderately tight for reefers and vans this week, while flatbeds are not in quite as high demand in the LA market this week and will be a little bit softer.
What tips do you have for owner-operators this week?
Yeah, this week I really thought I would touch on something that's pretty crucial for carriers to have a plan for. As an owner-operator, there's 2 incredibly important components. You have the owner or driver and your truck. Without both, the company just doesn't operate. I've seen pretty successful owner-operators lose their entire company for a while due to them not having a plan to ensure that their truck is continuing to run. And so wanted to kind of give some tips around that this week. So here's a couple tips that make sure that this doesn't happen to you. The first is make a maintenance schedules. Semi-trucks go through a lot of wear and tear on the road, so sticking to a regular maintenance schedule is one of the most essential truck driver safety tips that you can have. You should schedule basic, thorough, and full inspections regularly, depending on how many miles you've driven recently. Carriers and owner-operators should perform basic inspections every 15,000 miles. These assessments are crucial for trucking safety and include testing for brake and light functionality and checking and replacing fluids. A thorough inspection should come every 30,000 miles. These inspections will examine all the aspects of the basic inspection, but also include changing lube, filters, and any of the other emerging problems. Really, prevention is the key for all that. Carriers and owner-operators should perform a full inspection annually to ensure a truck's engine performs optimally. Addressing issues before they become more significant problems is at the top of any truck driver safety checklist, because not only prevents accidents, but regular maintenance also saves you a lot of money in the long run. So this maintenance is really key. Even though it's tough out there, don't let a breakdown take you out of your company. What we see in tougher markets, that maintenance is one of the first things that gets dropped. People don't do as much maintenance as they normally would in a better market, but it's super important to not let that happen to you and your company.
All right. If our listeners want more information, where can they go for that?
Yeah, you can get the latest rate information at dat.com/trendlines or look for the weekly market updates on the DAT blog. They're published every Wednesday.
Robert, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley.
That was Robert Rouse at DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.